Well, Kenyans for the second year marked Labor Day under strict COVID-19 measures, with President Uhuru Kenyatta and Labor stakeholders taking a record of less than 2 hours in the celebrations that took place at State House in Nairobi. But with the President's address came some good news at last. The cessation of movement in and out of the disease-infected zone has been lifted and the curfew hours revised, among other measures that will see the gradual reopening of the economy. Good evening and happy Labor Day. My name is Musa Salah and we have that and many more. But first, the top stories making headlines tonight. Another dull Labor Day celebrations under COVID-19 restrictions. President Uhuru Kenyatta and Labor stakeholders call for resilience. Also tonight, reprieve as President Kenyatta lifts the partial lockdown imposed on 5 counties a month ago. Kenyans take to social media with the hashtag #ThankYouUhuru after review of the COVID-19 protocols. Plus, ODM factions pledge support for the BBI bill as a section of Jubilee parliamentarians vow the bill will be passed in Parliament on Tuesday. The DP and his stalwarts are in a retreat in the Mara. And tonight, we give you fresh details of the deadly Changamwe drive-by shooting. No bullets or spent cartridges were recovered, and the police are accused of intimidating a brother of one of the deceased. Welcome to the broadcast. Ann Wairimu is our sign language interpreter. TV47 weekend begins right now. The cessation of movement into and out of the 5 counties has been lifted, with the new curfew hours in the red zone counties revised to 10 p.m. Speaking during Labor Day celebrations, President Uhuru Kenyatta said that a reduction in cases has informed the relaxation of some of the measures as the school calendar is set to go on as planned. Zainab Mohammed with the details.
After a month of strict COVID-19 measures, things are looking up as President Uhuru Kenyatta announces a huge reduction in the case load in most parts of the country, including the 5 highly infected counties.
Experts suggest that the same trend in the zoned areas we put on lockdown during March 26th of this year. After 1 month of lockdown, the COVID case load within the zoned areas has come down by 72%. In other areas of the Republic, the COVID caseload fell by 89% and in Mombasa and 90% in Busia between March and April of 2021.
The head of state announcing the relaxation of some of the measures, including the reopening of the 5 counties, with the curfew hours in those areas being revised to 10 p.m. In places of worship, in-person congregational worship will be resumed, with the attending capacity remaining to 1/3 of the total capacity of the place of worship. Restaurants and eateries in the zoned areas shall also be reopened on strict adherence to the COVID-19 protocols. Other areas that were closed and will now be opened include entertainment areas such as bars and clubs, with bar closure hours strictly set at 7 p.m. The school calendar will go on as planned, with the prohibition on political gatherings extended until further notice. Even though today's head of state's remarks has been warmly received by Kenyans, Uhuru warns that an increase in the infections could lead to another imposition of stricter measures. Zainab Mohammed, TV47.
Well, thank you, Zainab Mohammed, for that report. President Uhuru Kenyatta led the nation on Saturday in marking its 56th Labor Day celebrations in State House, Nairobi, for the 2nd consecutive year. The celebrations, occasioned by the coronavirus pandemic, yet again lacked the usual pomp and color, and comes at a time when the labor sector is grappling with the harsh effects of a 3rd wave of the COVID-19 disease. David Mudoka reports.
With just a few invited guests, among them top government and labor officials, journalists and its occupant, President Uhuru Kenyatta, State House Nairobi played host to the 56th Labor Day celebrations for the second year in a row on Saturday. Just like last year, the celebrations were marked in strict adherence to COVID-19 guidelines, among them social distancing and the wearing of masks. But the trademark song and dance, often associated with the day achievements of Kenya's labor movement, are commemorated, were not the only missing cogs today. Smiles on the faces of most Kenyan workers were missing as well. For the past 14 months, since the outbreak of the novel coronavirus in the country, streets, markets, industries and institutions have depicted a sorry state. Employees have been rendered jobless, others have been forced to take pay cuts, while some businesses have closed shop for good, with the worst hit sectors including hospitality, aviation, education, transport and logistics.
Cogs in the manufacturing sector have stopped turning as fast as they did. And indeed, it is not lost on me that the people most affected by these unfortunate events are the workers of our country.
Despite President Uhuru Kenyatta rolling out post-COVID-19 recovery measures in various presidential addresses in the past, the situation has gone from bad to worse over the 3 waves of the COVID pandemic. According to the Federation of Kenya Employers, at least 604 firms in Kenya sent workers home due to the coronavirus fallout in the past 12 months, and around 2 million people made redundant.
We can still meet and make some minor adjustments here and there when it comes to terms of either minimum wage or the negotiated collective bargaining agreements, to make sure that those who are serving under these difficult situations, their pockets are not depleted, because people are really suffering.
So we call upon all the political players to embrace social dialogue and tolerance, especially as we head to the general elections next year.
But President Kenyatta has assured workers that the government will not relent in cushioning its labor force, while also calling on Kenyan industries to remain innovative and stand tall in the face of the COVID-19 threat.
I would like to take mention of 2 innovative industries during the past 14 months of COVID. The first one is Hella Clothing Limited. The second industry I'd like to mention is Betty Investments, a Kenyan apparel company based in Nakuru. The success of these 2 companies and a mention was made possible because they were not paralyzed by the COVID crisis, but instead seized the opportunity and created innovations. But above all, their innovations preserved the much needed jobs and even created new ones.
And while most people are losing jobs, with the job market getting more hostile by the day, what then does it mean for graduates staring at a bleak future?
The Ministry of Labour and Social Protection has developed national internship policy, which will provide the necessary framework for implementation of internship.
With the labor sector still deep in the woods, this year's Labor Day could potentially go down in history as hopeless and dull as last year's. For the second year in a row, State House played host to Labor Day celebrations. But with that, top labor officials have called on President Uhuru Kenyatta to deliberately come to the rescue of a sector choking under the COVID-19 scourge. David Mudhoka, TV47 at State House, Nairobi.
Well done, David Mudhoka. Now, as President Uhuru Kenyatta led the country in marking the second Labor Day celebrations under lockdown, Kenyans continue to raise concerns regarding the burden of taxation and unemployment. Here are some of their opinions.
Ushuru inakuwa mingi, so ngeomba tu warejelee ile mpango walikuwa nayo hapa awali, na kama watashukisha kama 14 ama 10% hapo itakuwa nafuu. Manake pahali popote unapata mfanyakazi anapigwa ushuru, so unapata hata kupata kitu ambacho unaweza save ama, yani kwa kweli hali ya maisha imekuwa ngumu sana. So tunaomba tu labda waangalie jinsi at least wapungua ikuwe nafuu kidogo, sababu kila mtu unapoongea unapata anaumia.
Serikali ishughulikie vijana sana. Wamekuwa wakisema tunaleta kazi kwa vijana, lakini hizi kazi hatuzioni. Na ukiangalia kila semester vijana wana graduate. Every semester kuna mtu ametoka na hizi fields zimejaa na kuna kazi. Tunauliza hizi kazi tutazingoja mpaka lini? Na ukiangalia pia low wages za mshahara, kwa nini inapunguzwa? Tunajua kuna corona imeharibu kila kitu, lakini kama serikali imesema itatutafutia, mbona isitupatie fursa ya kutupatia sisi vijana loan ya kujiendeleza kama ni biashara, tupatiwe at a very low rate ndo tulijiendeleze na biashara zetu.
The government should consider the people who earn less money in the sense that they should reduce on taxes. For those like last year they had introduced the bill whereby we were not paying 30% tax. So I think it's something the government should consider and reduce the taxes from maybe 30% pay to 25%.
Well, away from Labor Day celebrations, Naivasha taxi drivers under the umbrella of Naivasha Digital Cabs and Digital Partner Society have resolved to kick out non-compliant applications that do not negotiate with them and instead set a standard using a homegrown application, My Ride app. Our reporter Willis Dennis Njiru has more of that story.
Naivasha town joins other towns in the countrywide boycott on fleet apps that is slated to commence on Monday 10th May 2021, following what the drivers say is oppression. Based on the past experiences, drivers in Naivasha are setting a standard with their new app, My Ride, through signing contractual agreements that govern the setting of prices, deactivation policies and commissions.
Tunarudi mahali ambapo hatutabeba mgeni kutoka Hell's Gate. Amelipa hoteli shilingi 25,000 usiku. Na tunambeba na shilingi 400.
Na amebeba mizinga 5.
So na amebeba Hennessy ya shilingi 7,500. Hiyo hatutakubaliana nayo.
A taxi is a luxury. If you cannot afford, stick to your lane.
Naivasha leaders say 6 years after other digital platforms made their entry into the country, the industry has operated without any government regulations, legal guidelines on stakeholders' operations, and lack of unity among its leadership.
Driver anabeba mgonjwa wake, mtoto ama mke wake, anapeleka hospitali, somebody amejificha mahali, anakuja anazima app, ukiulizwa unaambiwa you are offline. Surely hakuna vile mimi nitapeleka mke wangu hospitali niambiwe nimlipie gari yangu.
The decry, what they say is a skewed business operation model in which apps companies set prices, dictate the prices, pricing models and commissions to govern their operations.
Wameandika supervisors wa kuangalia dereva amebeba nani. Yaani hata ukiwa na girlfriend ukimpeleka out kwamba lazima ulipie na gari ni yako.
Ujambiwa kuna makosa umefanya. We unastukia tu, leta gari kwa ofisi. Na saa hizo umetoka kuweka fuel.
They attest that this model of operation has led to a massive losses by car owners and drivers following extremely low prices and very high commissions as a result of misclassification of cars, subjecting car owners to sell their high engine cars for lower engine cars as a precondition to operate on these apps.
Wenye apps kudecide bei hatutaruhusu. Lazima wakuje tukae pamoja chini kama drivers na wenye magari na wenye app to decide.
The Nakuru leadership shall therefore take a step to police all applications in Nakuru County, directly empowering drivers and partners through fair pricing and standards that the community has set for self-regulations after a long wait on the draft NTSA Regulations 2020.
A company that has put the driver as the number one priority.
Rates zao zinatufavor sana kama drivers compared with the other apps.
Reporting for TV 47 from Naivasha in Nakuru County, I'm Willie Dennis Njiru.
Now, Rarieda Member of Parliament Otiende Amolo has cautioned politicians against resorting to violence to shut down their opponents to towards the 2022 general election. This follows Friday's chaotic reception ceremony for the newly appointed Southeast Alego Assistant Chief at Nyanganga Primary School. The event took an ugly turn when Area Member of Parliament Samuel Atandi, who was playing host to Amolo, his Nyakach counterpart Aduma Awor, and Siaya Senator James Orengo failed to invite Alego Usonga parliamentary aspirant Nicholas Kut Ochogo to the podium to address the gathering. This prompted Ochogo's supporters to hurl stones at the leaders, forcing them to flee the venue.
We were briefly trying to talk to the people. A parliamentary aspirant here arrived with goons, and the goons started throwing stones and throwing chairs on us and hurling abuses and insults. And the situation became murky, and our security bodyguards decided to evacuate us. And you could see from the videos that we decided to leave the venue.
Yesterday, we came to the primary school known as Nyanganga Primary School, in a very peaceful function. And I want to assure the world that contrary to the way they are depicting the entire people of Alego Usonga as violent, the people of Alego Usonga are not violent. I am glad that Dr. Kut has apologized. I am glad you've apologized, Dr. Kut. Yeah? Because political differences will always be there, and they must be there. And there is no seat that is permanently for anyone. Because ultimately, people decide this thing at the ballot. What we must not do is bring violence in the mix. Hello? Because if we bring violence, even the people we want to vote for us will be afraid of going to the ballot box.
We are very sorry about what may have happened in Nyanganga yesterday. That was a sorry affair, but we should actually look at the cause of some of those things. Because if we have very senior people like James Orengo and Otienda Molo, I respect them because James Orengo is a liberator. He's worked for this country tirelessly. And I also want to say that I admire Otienda Molo in his political conversations. But I want to say that they should not be roped in some of these constituency problems or issues that are affecting relevant constituencies.
Well, TV47 Weekend takes a short commercial break, but we'll be back with more. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching TV47 Weekend. Keep talking to us. 22047 is our SMS line. You can also find us on social media at TV47 Kenya on Facebook, as well as at TV47 Kenya on Twitter. The hashtag to use is TV47 Weekend. Now, the BBI proponents in Parliament have expressed their confidence in passing the Constitutional Amendment Bill 2020 come Tuesday next week, ahead of a referendum likely to happen in July this year. Further, Gotv Secretary General Francis Atwoli says there is no better time for a constitutional change than now, calling upon Kenyans to support the BBI. This comes as Deputy President William Ruto's allies from Mount Kenya region convene at Masai Mara for strategy ahead of the referendum and 2022 polls.
As the Parliament is expected to debate and pass the Constitutional Amendment Bill 2020 next week on Tuesday, the BBI proponents have expressed their confidence that the bill will be overwhelmingly supported ahead of a referendum that is likely to happen July this year.
Tuesday will be a defining moment. And from where I sit, Tuesday will be what you call the Super Tuesday, because that is the day we will make a decision whether to take the country forward or stagnate the country. And I have no doubt in my mind that majority will carry the day. We will have over 200 going to 250 members of Parliament who are supporting BBI from the National Assembly. And I believe the same will also happen to the Senate, because conscience will prevail.
Asking those leaders, before you go demanding, whoever will come in if you pass BBI, will make sure that we have resources mashinani. And that is the bottom line of BBI. So even if you don't demand, we have a good or bad president. If you have money mashinani, we'll be fine.
ODM leader Raila Odinga's stalwarts James Orengo and his Rarieda counterpart Otiende Amolo says the parliamentary duty is almost completed with next week's vote, urging Kenyans to brace themselves for a referendum in July this year, affirming their support to Raila Odinga's presidency come 2022.
Msimamo yetu ni kwamba hii BBI tunataka ipitishwe na wiki ijayo itapitishwa katika bunge la taifa na bunge la Senate, na ikifika mwezi wa Julai ama mwezi wa 8 tunaenda kwa kura ya referendum ama maoni, na tunaomba Wakenya wote wakati huu mpige kura ndio kwa hili swala, na najua itapita, hata katika bunge najua itapita.
Is that as soon as we are done with BBI, we had set on a journey to Canaan. And that journey will continue to its fruition. And what I know, is that the completion of the journey to Canaan is the day Raila Amolo Odinga will take the Bible to be sworn not just as the people's president, but as the lawfully elected president of the Republic of Kenya.
On the same breath, Gotv boss Francis Atwoli says this is the opportune time to amend constitution in what he terms as the only way to deal with the corruption menace in the country.
Handshake. This is what created the peace where we are today. Don't relent on BBI. It is us as workers who said we must revisit our constitution. And I want to appeal to members of parliament. They should not look at those areas. They will still again time to time be looked at in future. Let us have a new constitution.
On whether the country will hold a referendum soonest possible, this will be determined by the outcomes of the parliament's sittings next week. Elizabeth Motuko, TV47 Nairobi.
Away from politics and on to some good news. A day after we highlighted the pain and agony of Samuel Kuria Nyomo, a man with albinism who has developed huge wound in his scalp owing to skin cancer, he has been admitted in hospital. The admission came through well-wishers who pledged to mobilize resources to help him get treatment. Our reporter Boniface Barasa has the details.
Samuel Nyomo's facial expression reflects the pain he's enduring. He's assisted by Mr. Bernard Wambua to leave his house and board an ambulance to begin his journey to Eldoret.
Shukuru TV47 kwa kuhighlight na kuonyesha kwamba kweli kijana wetu anaumia. Kufuatia ile highlight Mimi kama kiongozi ambaye rafiki yangu huyu anatoka maeneo yangu, nimechukua hatua ya kuhakikisha ya kwamba anapelekwa hospitali. Kwa hivyo mtu yoyote yule pamoja na mimi na wengine ambaye tunaweza kumsaidia, tujitokeze tuweze kumsaidia wakati bado anahitaji usaidizi.
The orphan who resides in Matecha area within Tuani slums has been suffering from cancer for 2 decades.
Nimeshukuru kwa wale wahisani ambao wamejitokeza, na vile vile ninazidi kuomba kwa serikali kuu, iwapo kutakuwa na usaidizi ambao watatusaidia, tutashukuru zaidi kwa sababu sisi peke yetu hatuwezi.
As Nyomo secures admission at Hospice Healthcare Center in Eldoret ahead of Monday chemotherapy sessions at Eldoret Referral Hospital, more well-wishers have been called to come on board to meet his medical bill, since he still has a huge burden of meeting the medical costs of about 2 million shillings.
Saizi tunapotoka hapa tunapeleka kijana hospital care ili akaweza kupata malezi, tukingoja kwenda kuanza chemotherapy on Monday at pale referral hospital. Lakini kama walemavu, especially sisi watuani, tungeomba ya kwamba wahisani wale wako pale nje, hata serikali itself waweze kukaa mini, kwa sababu hao wenzetu wenye wana ulemavu ya ngozi, kansa inawalemea.
Napotoa yeye hapa, anapopelekwa hospitali, matibabu yake yanahitaji pesa nyingi sana.
Meanwhile, the national government has been called upon to equip county hospitals with the necessary infrastructure and manpower to enable the managed cancer cases.
Mambo ya kansa iweze kutiliwa mkazo kwa sababu hiyo ndio magonjwa ambayo yanaua watu wengi na yanaua tajiri, maskini, na matibabu yake iko juu sana. Kwa hivyo serikali ingeangalia mambo hayo na kusaidia watu ambao wajiwezi kama Nyomo huyu.
Nyomo's case is the epitome of the challenges that many cancer patients endure.
It is a sigh of relief for Nyomo as he continued to seek for more well-wishers to come in handy to help him. Bonfas Barasa, TV47, Trans Nzoia County.
Well, we wish Samuel the best of luck as he begins his journey to beat cancer. Now, 2 people, a man and a woman, were killed in 2 separate incidents last night. A boda rider met his death in the hands of a gun-toting gang in Kamolo, while a woman was allegedly killed by her husband in Kajiado County. Grace Josephine has the full story.
A 33-year-old woman, Cynthia Chesang, has been killed by her husband in Kajiado following a domestic dispute. According to neighbors, the husband, Ronald Karimera Allah, also aged 33, is known for turning violent, beating his wife whenever they disagree.
Mwanaume mimi kwangu naweza sema ni violence, drunkard, irrespective mtu, yani hata haonangi watu kani watu. So kitu yenye amefanya ni kitu watu wengi walikuwa wanaonea kwa umbali. Juu hata huyu mwenye alikuwa na yeye alikuwa anampiga sana. He was violent. Ni mwanaume hata haheshimu hata wanawake.
The neighbors are used to the noise and their attention was drawn by the sudden silence after a long fight by the couple. After a quarrelsome night with his wife, Renard left for work in the morning as if all was well, giving the neighbors a chance to peep into the house where they confirmed their fears.
Tumewazoea kupigana. Saa jana kama saa 11 walianza vita, wakapigana mpaka usiku. Lakini ikifika kitu saa 3 hivi tukakosa kusikia sauti. Tunasikia viti ndani ya nyumba ndio zinavurutanishwa. Alafu asubuhi mzee akaamkia kwenda. Alienda, bibi hakubaki na tukaona manyumba amefunga na kifuri, ndio tukaanza kususpect. Kuangalia kwa dirisha tunaona kitu imekunjanishwa na manguo.
Kunaweza kuwa saa hiyo anakuja kuniitisha kifunguo saa 10, alikuwa anataka kufungia kwa vikiviki akatupe.
Na tukaweza kumfuata, nikaenda nikamshika na nikaita maafisa wa polisi, wakaja wakamchukua.
The suspect is being detained at the Kajiado police station. Cynthia body was moved to Kajiado mortuary. Elsewhere, a boda operator was robbed and shot dead last night by an unknown gang in Kamulu. Residents woke up to his dead body dumped in the thicket within the area. According to residents, boda operators have of late become an easy target for robbers, especially those working past curfew hours.
Tunatarajia action itachukuliwa kwa huyu kijana ameuliwa anaitoka Hawaii. Tukisema pole sana kwa familia. Tufunge kazi mapema na tujichunge. Kama ni kijana wa pikipiki, beba mtu mwenye unajua. na ukiona anakupeleka direction na ujui, wachana na yeye.
No one has been arrested in connection to the murder of the boda boda rider. Grace Josephine, TV47.
Well, it's time to take another short commercial break. We'll be back with more. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching TV47 Weekend, and just to sample some of your comments on social media, Fadhil Wesonga on Facebook says he's watching us from Umoja 1. Tessie John is also saying that he's watching TV47 Weekend. Keep talking to us. Our SMS line is 22047. You can also find us on social media at TV47 Kenya on Facebook, as well as at TV47K on Twitter. The hashtag to use is TV47 Weekend. Now, Nairobi Governor Anne Kanano Mwenda has today donated food stuff to the National Hidden Talents Academy, an organization under the Dagoretti Corner Rehabilitation Center. The center, a community-based organization in Gando Ward, lacks enough food to nourish the 100 children under its care. The academy founder, Pastor Enos Oumo, says that they also lack the resources to pay their teaching staff who devote their time towards educating the former street children. While celebrating her birthday, Kananu has committed to collaborate with Ngando Ward MCA Peter Waihenya in providing food for the children on a monthly basis. The center was formed in 1993 to offer free, non-formal education to street children, abandoned and orphaned children.
Hawa watoto wote unaona hapa, they have come here for rehabilitation. Na saizi wameng'ara kama bamba.
Kama mama, kama mzazi, nimesikia nimeshikika sana kwa roho kuona umejitolea na umeweza kufunza watoto 100. Nimekuja na chakula ambayo itasaidia watoto for the next 1 month. Mimi nitapatia pasta namba yangu in support of hidden talent.
Now, a drive-by shooting in Changamwe that happened 10 days ago is turning out to be a well-planned killing that was preceded by threats from the police. And as a reporter, Mariam Mwacharo found out, not a single bullet or a spent cartridge was recovered from the bodies of the victims, the car, or even the scene. Who took them away and why? Also, one passenger survived the attack unscathed, but the police did not care to look for him.
On the night of April 21st, 2021, 3 people were killed in a drive-past shootout in Changamwe, Mombasa County. The first, James Mwangi, a businessman in Mombasa, and the other 2 were later identified as Abel Alex and Linus Mosha, mechanics at King Orani, Mombasa, were Tanzanian nationals. According to the police commandant in Changamwe Sub-County, David Matthew, little was known then and is still known about the driver, James Mwangi, whose car was sprayed with more than 30 bullets. Why he was targeted by unknown attackers is still a mystery. Or is it?
At around 8:30 p.m., there's a motor vehicle that was being driven from Kibarani area towards Changamwe. And the motor vehicle registration number is KDA 343S. That was driven by somebody by the name James Mwangi Munyalo. And upon reaching KRA staff houses, there's a motor vehicle that was being driven slightly behind it. And while they were in a motion mode, the occupants of this motor vehicle that is not known fired towards this Toyota Auris, killing the driver on the spot. And the other 3 occupants, because the vehicle had 4 occupants, the other 3 occupants were seriously injured.
TV47 set out to follow up on what seemed like a twisted and well-calculated murder of James Mwangi and his passengers who may have been collateral damage. 3 days after the incident, the post-mortem examination of the 3 individuals who died after the shooting was conducted. The cause of death was profuse bleeding, but nothing more was said about the dead. Not a single mention of the nature of the bullet wounds or the bullets recovered. We therefore set out to speak with the person the police said was the sole survivor of the incident. He explained the horror of that fateful night.
Ilikuwa ni saa 1:30. Nilikuwa eneo ya Sabasaba nikielekea Changamwe. Sasa kuna bwana mmoja anakaa Mikindani, tunafahamikiana. Sasa unajua kutokana na Changamwe vile ilivyo, kwa sababu barabara zinatengenezwa na ukifika jioni huwa kuna shida sana ya magari. Naona sasa especially matatu. Sasa hiyo matatu ikiwa na shida, sasa nikasimama pale masaa mengi mpaka saa 2 hivi hapo. Sasa nikaona huyu bwana tunafahamiana amepaki gari mahali ni kama nataka kwenda. Nikamwambia sio nisaidie unibwage mbele. Akaniambia ingia. Na alikuwa kuna mafundi wake. Alikuwa na mechanic wake. Alikuwa na mechanic na wiring, mtu wa wiring. Maana kuna gari yake ilikuwa imeharibika diff. Na kwa atakwenda kuitengeneza.
An innocent ride to his residence. However, unknown to him was what awaited him and 5 others. Zablon was not the only passenger in the car.
Kanambia kuna fundi wa wiring anamngojea. Sasa tukangoja mara huyu akatokezea. Sasa kwa kuna bwana mwingine pale pia alikuwa anataka nini? Alikuwa anataka lift pia. Sasa akamwambia ingia. Sasa nyuma tuko watu watatu. Alafu mbele wako watu wawili. Kwa ufupi ni tulikuwa 5 kwa gari.
And the journey began. According to Zablon, the driver, the late James Mwangi had picked up his mechanic and a wiring technician to take them to a place where they would fix another of his car that had mechanical problems. Riding in the car along with the 2 mechanics and Zablon was another passenger who had hitchhiked. On their way.
Tukifika eneo ya roundabout. Sasa tulifika hapo najua kulikuwa na jam kidogo. Gari zinaenda pole. Mbona nikasikia Sasa mimi niko kule ndani katikati, mimi nafikiri ni gari nyingine. Maana yake gari yetu ilikuwa amefunga vioo juu. Kulikuwa na vumbi nyingi sana wakati huo tukipanda juu. Hii barabara kutoka Tano kwenda Changamwe huwa na vumbi. Sasa alikuwa amefunga tint na akaeka nini? Akaeka AC. Maana yake tuko wengi ndani. Mara kuja kushtuka huyu mtu huyu co-driver huyu yuko mbele yangu hapa, naona anavuja damu, akinimwalia damu. Nikiangalia huyu mwingine naona anafanya nini? Anankoroma. Sasa mimi ikabidi nikajilaza pale chini, nikamlalia huyu jamaa mwingine. Sasa huyu bwana naona akinimwalia mpaka damu zake, nikajaribu kumsukuma. Sasa nikijaribu kuangalia dereva kule ni kama ametoa macho, ni kama anakata roho. Unaona? Sasa ndio sasa hiyo risasi zikaacha kulia. Huyu jamaa tuko naye hapa nimemlalia, nikamwambia hebu fungua. Sasa mimi sikujua kama risasi imeingia. Mimi nilisikia tu kama kitu kama nimekelia kama tuseme kama kalamu kama nini kwenye mfuko nyuma. Sikujua. Lakini sasa nilisikia mguu upande wa hamstring umechange. Sasa nikasema mguu mbona umeche, lakini mimi sikufikiria kama mambo ya risasi. Sasa wakati nikimwambia fungua mlango tutoke, akifungua tu yeye akuguswa na risasi. Sasa wakati mimi nikitoka step nje, sasa ndio mguu nikasikia una nguvu kabisa. Nikasikia nimeanguka chini. Ndio nikajua nimepigwa risasi.
Zablon explains that he was rushed to hospital while the other passenger who escaped unhurt left the scene. However, Zablon says he heard those who witnessed the incident saying something contrary to what the police reported.
Watu wa bodaboda wajua walikuwa hapo. Ndio nikasikia sasa hapo wanaongea, hao ni kina nani? Kuna watu wawili wa bodaboda. Kuna jamaa na mwenzake alikuwa kwa bodaboda. Ndio walikuwa wamerusha hizo risasi. Unaona sasa ndio hapo mimi nikajua ni watu wawili wa bodaboda.
A victim of circumstance, it seems. At the Coast General Hospital where he was rushed for treatment, Zablon got visits from the police who are conducting investigations into the matter.
Unajua sasa polisi walikuja wakaniambia tukio kama ile limetendeka eneo la kwao. Eneo la Changamwe nao ni CID wa Changamwe. Sasa ndio wakasema watakuwa ndio waje wanihoji, wajue ni nini hasa kimetokea. Ndio mimi nikawaelezea.
As we left the hospital, our efforts to speak to family members of the slain victims of the deadly shooting finally bore fruits. David Gitonga, a brother of the late James Mwangi, came to speak to us, claiming that his family was receiving threats from the police.
Kuna askari mmoja aliwahi kunithreaten mwezi wa 3. Mimi nilikuwa natoka zangu pande ya Kilifi nikija Mazeras. Nilipokuja nikikaribia pale Rabai, nilipokea simu Ile simu nilipokea sikuwa najua ni ya nani. Na baada ya kuongea, nilipo receive simu, yule bwana aliniambia kwamba niachane na kazi ya chuma na kwamba nikiendelea na kazi ya chuma wataniua.
According to the police media brief, the shootout pattern revealed that the assailants had targeted the driver. Something that begs the question, could they have mistaken Mwangi for Gitonga? So what did he do after getting the threat?
Niliposimama liani nikapata kulikuwa na koplo mmoja pale. Na nikamweleza namba ambayo imetokezea, ile ambayo imenipigia. Kwa hivyo wakati nilimuelezea yule askari, hata askari akalichukua namba na akapiga simu. Akapigia ile namba simu, lakini haikuchukuliwa. Ndio baadaye kuna rafiki yangu mmoja ambaye najua naye askari, nilimtumia hiyo namba. Nikamuuliza niangalie kama hiyo namba unaweza jua ni ya nani. Yule askari aliniambia kwamba namba amejua ni ya askari mmoja kutoka Taru. Na ni askari anaitwa Kiplagat. So nikamuuliza ni kwa nini Kiplagat basi anaambia maneno mazito kama ya kwamba ataniua. Nilisikia uchungu kulingana vile alielezea. Ndio baadaye huyo bwana anaitwa Lagati akaniambia kwamba ataongea na Kiplagat. Na kweli baadaye alikuja akaniambia aliongea naye na akamwambia ilikuwa ni ulevi. Na wakati tuko pale yule askari manake baadaye alimpigia simu yule askari. Akapiga Kiplagat na akamsamu ni akuje Rabai police station. Lakini hakuweza kukuja.
Days later, his brother was shot dead at Changamwe. The police called him to inform him of the incident the next morning. And after he left the police station for Mazeras on April 22nd, 2021, after the news of his brother's death broke, the same Kiplagat called him with a message.
Kiplagat mwenyewe kwa muda mwaka nilipigia simu nikaitana alo. Sasa nilipochukua maana ndani pengine ni salamu tunaongea ama pengine ni mambo mengine nataka kuniuliza. Kiplagat anakuja akaniambia kwamba sasa ujue ndio umebaki. Na wewe anaenda kanunue sanduku. Kwa hivyo ukao ukijua sisi saa hii hakuna mchezo. Akaniambia si unaona tumemaliza mpaka ndugu yako.
James Mwangi was laid to rest at his home in Mariakani on Thursday, 29th April, while the bodies of the other 2 Tanzanians who worked with him were transferred to Moshi for the final send-off. As we continued to search for answers, David continued receiving threats, warning him against speaking to the media over his brother's killing. Despite the ongoing investigations, some facts stood out as rather contradictory, suspicious, or just made up. The police report had reported that there were 4 people in the car during the shootout. But according to Zablon, one of the survivors currently in hospital, there were 4 passengers in the car and the driver. One of the passengers escaped unscathed. He has not been accounted for or mentioned by the police to date. According to Zablon, witnesses explained to him that the attackers were on a motorbike that sped after the shooting. However, police reports say that an unknown vehicle had tailed Mwangi's car to the scene of the crime. Another peculiar detail is that no cartridges were recovered from the scene and no bullets were found in the bodies of the slain victims during the post-mortem examination. Also, no bullets were recovered from the car that was towed to Changamwe police station. Remember, more than 30 bullets hit the car, killing 3 of its occupants. Many speculations have arisen over Mwangi's killing. While the first wife could not speak to us, his second wife revealed painfully how difficult it is to understand the circumstances in which her husband's life was taken, leaving the family in agony.
Yani, it is sad. Mimi nina so many questions. What happened? Yani, ilikuwaje ikafika tu that extent? Hata kama ni makosa alikuwa amefanya, there is law, kuna so many ways, so many avenues za kunini, but in such a way, hata kama ni kitu alikuwa amefanya, ni mtu amekosea, what we want as a family is justice. So we have ile the same way we are not having peace. Hao watu waliomfanyia hivyo. And we ask, mimi personally nimewasamea, lakini I wish they never get peace. They never get peace. ile uchungu sisi tunasikia, wao Mungu awatafutie sehemu.
Relatives left in agony and grief with so many unanswered questions. However, the families of James, Abel, and Moshe are still hopeful that the police will unearth exactly who killed their kin. Mariam Mwacharo, TV47, Mombasa County.
What a moving story by our very own Mariam Mwacharo there. Thank you, Mariam, for that report. Now, Somalia's lower house of parliament has today voted unanimously to cancel a divisive 2-year presidential term extension it approved last month, a move that might help end an armed standoff in the capital, Mogadishu. The crisis over the term extension has raised fears that Al-Qaeda-linked Al-Shabaab insurgents could exploit the situation. Militants from Al-Shabaab took over at least one Somali town in the past week as heavily armed fighters moved from the countryside into the capital city. The lower house vote came shortly after President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo addressed parliament and said he was directing his prime minister to spearhead preparations for the election.